Hello, Sue and Randy.
Hi, Mike and Andrea. Welcome back. We are at week 13. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Third Option International Live Chat Series. Sue and Randy Pinto here, again, along with Mike and Andrea Buckley. And we are at topic 13, almost done with this 14 topic cycle. And this week we're talking forgiveness, which can be really, really difficult. We can say the words, I forgive, but those could be just words. Your heart and your head really aren't into it, and they have no meaning. The hurt might just be too deep. So, we want to be able to get past that hurt in order to dig ourselves out so that we can forgive and hopefully help repair our relationship. So Mike and Andrea, last week we talked about feelings and that whole hurt cycle. So if you could just kind of do a review on that, of how to work through that hurt so that we could then move into the forgiveness process.
Well, generally when we hurt our spouse, we don't do it intentionally. It just happens, and then it can either escalate or it can be de-escalated if we use that process to do things the proper way. We generally have a personality like, some of us communicate like a lion. We roar and we're loud, and that other person might be a turtle and they stick their neck in because they don't want to get hurt. And what we're looking for in the solution end of those personalities is that as a lion, sometimes we need to soften the way we communicate, the way we talk, the way we respond. And sometimes as a turtle, we need to stick our neck out a little bit and take that risk that, hey, somehow we got to make some progress, and we'll speak when it's safe. And we are looking to open dialogue, not have war with each other. We're going to talk about forgiveness tonight, and that's what happens when we don't do things the way we should. But again, that original hurt is generally not intentional. It just happens, and then it escalates from there. And the person that is hurt, a very important part of this whole hurt spiral is we need to say, ouch, that hurt me when you said it that way. Sometimes we forget to do that. And when we do that, that other person who's that roaring lion doesn't even know that they hurt that other person. And the real gist of this whole lesson is, am I building up our relationship, our marriage, or am I tearing it down? So that was kind of a quick synopsis of what we went through last week.
Okay, so then, hopefully we use those techniques, and then we can get out of that hurt cycle. So once we sort of move into that, how do we get into this forgiveness part, where either if I'm the one who has to ask for forgiveness, I am truly intentionally doing it, and ready to make it up to my partner, or if he's the one, or if I'm the one that has to do the apologizing. How do we get into this process, and what do we do to make sure that we can have forgiveness, we can work together, and then we can sort of move forward together, as instead of just continuing to be separate, I'm mad over here, I'm not doing this, he's not doing this. What do we do?
Well, okay, it's an interesting and important topic, forgiveness. The answers to your question are going to come as we start talking, as we get into our conversation. And I think Mike's led into it. The good lead is that sometimes it's intentional. We're in that hurt spiral, so it's no accident that the hurt spiral was right before forgiveness. And sometimes, I don't know, did I say intentional? Well, we do it both ways, intentionally or unintentionally. But we're human, and we're acknowledging first and foremost, we're going to do this, and we can identify with it. I could be the person who's hurting, and I can be the inflictor who hurts someone else. So once we recognize that, then we recognize that the way out is this process. It's not just a one-time thing, forgiveness. It's not a nebulous thing. It's not a feeling kind of thing. It's a process. We like to use that word. So we hope everybody will think of it that way. And you're going to show us this great chart in a few minutes, it's going to chart out this process. Our emotions get in the way. So I think we have to identify that. That's the first thing at getting to the process, to recognize that we have to deal with the emotions, and it's going to take time and it's going to take effort. And I would think that the first thing that we're going to see on this chart, once you put it up, is probably the segue, answer your question, resuming respectful treatment. And that's going to take us all the way back to the Bill of Rights, which I'm not going to go into because it takes too long. But anybody that's been watching or wants to go to Third Option and look it up or has the series, you're going to go through that whole Bill of Rights. And there's a lot on there. And when you're in a forgiveness, a battle, a hurt cycle battle, it's the farthest thing from our mind sometimes to say, okay, now I got to resume respectful treatment.
Right.
It means he has a lot of rights, and I have a lot of rights to be heard, to make mistakes, to be treated fairly, to be given the benefit of the doubt, all those things. So that's where it starts.
So can we talk about the, before we started, we were talking a little bit about the balance line, and I just put it up there for everyone to see. Shall we start at this point, just discussing this balance line of where we both can be off balance, or where one of us can be off balance?
Sure. When we look at that balance line, sometimes when we've been hurt, we make a choice, and sometimes we hold a grudge. We cannot forgive yet. We're not ready to. Emotions are running high, or perhaps it's the offender, the person that did the wrongdoing. They're going to not apologize. Well, is that going to work? I don't think so. But if the person that is wronged forgives too easily on the other side, have they really gone through what happened to them? And if they do forgive too easily, then it almost is a sign to that other wrongdoer that, well, I guess it's okay if she's going to forgive me. I'm going to do this again probably someday. And then you're really destroying the relationship. And of course, as Andrea mentioned, this forgiveness and repair is a process. And if we're going to go through this process, and as we work through it, she went through the resume respectful treatment after the hurt's taken care of. Then we have to go to number 2, which is honest communication. And that means we got to begin to talk to each other and listen to each other again. And that wrongdoer needs to understand just how much it hurt his or her spouse and how they feel. And they really need to understand just how serious the breach is and why. If we don't do that step, we're not going to make any progress. So the injured person must understand the wrongdoer's intentions. What were they intending? What were they thinking? Why did they make that decision to do what they did? Perhaps it was an accident, perhaps it wasn't. However, that wrongdoer might have been tired, could have been under a lot of stress. We'll never know the answer to those questions until we do communicate. Again, listening and sharing. And sometimes the listening is going to be painful because we're going to hear details that led up to that whole issue of why it took place. But it is necessary. And, we got to communicate about things. Really, Third Option is all about that. And that's what we're looking to do. Sometimes communication doesn't make it all go away or okay, but it helps us to understand that other person's perspective. Perhaps it's not really as important as we first felt it was. Sometimes it's not nearly the issue of the way that they communicated. Sometimes we have to listen better to know exactly what they're talking about. We really care. Listening is very healing. And the more we listen and understand, the more compassion we can have for that other person.
And, I think oftentimes we vilify people and we think of the other person as the enemy. And that's another thing that in the beginning, we have to kind of think, okay, I got to just stop my thinking right now. And this is another person, another human being with feelings just like me. They're not the enemy.
Even more so, going back to, we start out with not even thinking just another person, but this is your spouse, your loving companion. You're all on the same side, and suddenly we forget that and we do this. You said at the beginning, and it struck me when the process was put up, you can't start the process. It's not innate. It's got to be intentional. As you said, you've got to break away from emotion, and ego sometimes a big part of that, right? And you got to start that process and stop reacting and start thinking and responding carefully, right? To even start this process. So it's a hard thing to get into, and the big thing we try to keep in mind as well, we all are on the same team and we do both want the same thing. So how do we get from that to that, right? It shouldn't be that hard, but it is, as you said, it's complicated, right?
It is.
It is.
And, that's very interesting. You bring that up too, Randy. It ties into the talk on responsibility too, because we're going to talk about now on the chart, you have parts, you have divisions. So you have work to do, you have responsibilities emotionally that you're invested now in this relationship. So you see on the chart, when you put that up, after you look at, okay, both of us have to resume the respectful treatment. Both of us have to have honest communication. But now it splits. And we'll notice that each person has to do their own work. So this is an important juncture right there. The wrongdoer has to do the steps that they need to do, which are apologize and repair. We're going to talk a little bit about those. Let's do that first. The wrongdoer, what does that mean? It means we have to admit we did something wrong. I mean, we've all been there. I raised my hand. I'm sure you guys have too. We've made mistakes. We're the person that's done something wrong, intentional or otherwise. So we have to say we're sorry. We really desire to feel like we wished we hadn't done it. And then the idea about having a plan too, am I going to be conscious that, okay, I know that hurt that person now. Am I going to try to not have this happen again? So the apology really kind of needs to be together with, it's not just a one time I'm sorry. If it's been a habit or you can see you've done it before, which is common in our relationships. Well, but you know what? I don't know if I really accept that apology because you've told me twice now you're sorry. Are you going to keep doing it? Is it going to keep happening? So that's where the plan comes in. Trying to avoid how we don't want to go back to this problem again. And the repair for the damages, it's hard. Words are hard to take back. We all know that. Actions sometimes are just as hard. We've hurt, we've broken something. It's hard to repair it, make restitution. But we can make offers to try to make things right again, different ways. Proof that we mean what we say, that we're really sorry. Okay, and it has to have that sincerity, not be in the form of a demand. Like, okay, I said I'm sorry, now you have to forgive me. It's not
Right.
that.
And so to your point, it can be misused.
Yes, manipulated.
Right.
The other part of repair is if we go to somebody's house and we break their lamp, we're going to offer to fix it or buy them a new one. And that's part of the repair process. So the same thing is if we've hurt our spouse, we want to do something extra to show them that we really are sorry for that, for the apology of what we did, and that we want to make it right. And that helps that injured party to know that we really do not want to have this happen again. So that's part of that repair process. And when we go to the grieving now we're going to move over to the injured party. Once they've been hurt, if it's something that's not that big, maybe in an hour, they'll be okay. They'll get over it. And as long as that other person does apologize, say, gee, I didn't mean to do that, they can get over it and go to the let go part of it pretty quickly. But if it's something like an infidelity or something really serious, this could take time, and they need to grieve, to go through all the emotions, think about what has happened, and they really need for that wrongdoer to help do the things that they need to do, that apology with a plan before they can begin that forgiveness process. So, and then after we've done that, we do have to at some point let go if we're ready to forgive. And we can't say exactly when that is for every person or for every offense. There is no Bible or timeline that says when you do it, but at some point we need to do it, not only for that other person that needs the forgiveness, but for ourselves, because that's the poison inside of us that we're not willing to let go. It can linger for days, weeks, months, and even years. And then we run into a whole lot of problems emotionally. It affects the rest of our families. It can really do a lot of damage if we don't do our work.
Right. That, you know, and this is a big part of where, yes, hopefully, like you said, if it's a smaller hurt, it can, perhaps you'll be able to let it go within an hour or a day or whatever. If it's on the smaller side of an infraction, for more serious infractions that really test your relationship, it could take, like you said, months, years. But then there is, again, it has to be intentional from what I'm understanding. You have to be intentional, not only in apologizing and making a plan to make sure that it doesn't happen, that you as the wrongdoer don't hurt your partner again, but also intentional to grieve, let it go, and let it go, which means not keeping score, which I think, right, that's that whole thing that many times happens. I think, unfortunately, we all have done it. I'm sure earlier in our relationship probably have done, well, maybe he's done it. No, but I'm sure we've all done it. But yeah, it's really, you have to be intentional that you want this to work. You want to repair and reconcile, which is that fifth step. So it's really letting go. There's still maybe times of falter. I'm sure there's still maybe times where it's like, oh, I don't know, I'm still feeling a little, this is affecting me again, but hopefully, you know, it will get easier with time, and then it can be put to bed or put to rest. So not keeping score, I think, is a big thing to remember. That's my 2 cents.
No, it's true. That's very true. And I think it's only when the two parties involved really sense the sincerity of the work that's being done there on both sides. In other words, that process can be off in a lot of ways, and you're not going to have the reconciliation at the end. And it's really based on the two people, their sincerity, the way they communicate honestly with each other. And if they can renew that sense of caring, love and caring, then there's the hope and kind of an assurance that, okay, I think we've really gotten to this now. I don't think this is going to happen again. We really understand each other. We know how deep it was. And so that gives you the hope that you're going to go forward. That's the reconciliation. But, you know, we do want to point out, you can get stuck in the process. We've gotten stuck in the process. I'm sure you have too. And Mike mentioned about the grudge person, but then there's a self-pity part you can have on the other side, or self-righteousness of the person who's been hurt. So you have to treat each other respectfully and try to make up for the injury the best way you can. And you can't do it if the other person's not willing, and you can't do the other person's work for them. So I can't make Mike not feel hurt, and if he wants to wallow in his pain and hurt, I can't make him let go of it.
Right.
If he's been injured, and vice versa. And he can't do the apology. If I'm the one that's been wrong, he can't make me apologize. So that is important to recognize. That's key to this. And we can't feel guilty if we don't reach that. It's frustrating, but I think we have to tell and be honest about it. You don't always reach this reconciliation about some really deep issues that are hard for us. We may have a certain area we struggle in. You might have a different area. Other couples, the same thing. So we want to make light of all of this. And also you have, if someone refuses to apologize, Well, like Mike said, it would be healthy to let go of the emotions, and nothing will be different the next time. You know, you're setting yourself up for more of the same. The relationship can't go back to normal until there's some kind of indication that things are going to be different. So you're kind of at a stalemate. These are obstacles to the process. Carrying a grudge.
Even best case, when both parties are trying or want to, they might not, be at the same place at the same time. So as you alluded to earlier, it's hard to get everything in alignment, working. So it's not easy. Yeah, that's what I think I've seen or heard people talking, some of the sharing sessions that people are here. It's not quite at the same, hitting the same realization at the same time. So sometimes you may have to wait a little bit for somebody to catch up or realize, that they're not there yet. But it's not that it's intentional, but it takes a little time to get there.
And that's where I think at the beginning, and I can't remember if we talked about it at the very beginning of our this whole live chat series, but that's where you talk about the line of reconciliation, correct? Where
Right.
There's that line of reconciliation where Randy may be up here in whatever process, and I may be closer to that line. So we may be opposite, but give it 6 months. I think, what is it? 6 months, there's generally kind of this rule, or to give it some time so that you both can at some point cycle and meet at that line. I don't think I explained it well, but maybe you can explain it better.
No, that you did a great job.
Holding the line of reconciliation.
Yeah. It's like bicycling. Sometimes somebody gets ahead and the other one has to catch up. And then sometimes you're both going at the same time.
Yeah. We call that standing on the line of reconciliation.
Yeah.
And that way, sometimes one of the party has to hold it together while the other one's trying to work through their difficult stuff. And if you're really committed to the marriage, you'll do that. But at some point, that other person has to do their work, and the other person has to kind of be patient for a while. But it's difficult. And, going back to the person that won't forgive, that's really difficult, because when that occurs, we're really struggling inside ourselves, and the other person is struggling inside themselves, and we're just not going to make any headway. And that's when we have to take a look at the situation and say, perhaps if this person didn't even apologize, separation might be in order. If it's really serious, it could be, and that could be a helpful thing. Because if we are not going to be able to get to the point of mutual agreement in this whole issue, then there are going to be hurts that perhaps won't be ever repaired. And we have to take a look at how this process is going to play out.
And I know I'm glad you brought that up, because I think I remember you mentioned it in maybe last week or maybe a previous topic, that there are times where separation is needed, and I remember hearing from other couples where they have been at rock bottom, and they've been separated. Not only have they been separated, but they've actually already been divorced, and then went through this third option process, and then they reconnected and worked things out, remarried, and are quite happy. So other times, some people may have gone through the separation, and sometimes people need that little bit apart to be able to process, to really think about, boy, I really do want this to work, and then you can come back together. So, the program is not, I think I can speak on this and say that this program is not like you can never separate, you can never, sometimes you have to do certain things in order to get into the same area together. And sometimes a separation is needed. And like I said, there's been people who've been all the way down and divorced and beyond, but they've been able to come back through this third option program.
So sometimes a timeout is a part of the process.
It can
Right.
be.
It can be, right?
That's right. It is.
Yep. And sometimes it can really be out of alignment, so to speak. And there's a lot of factors. There's another aspect we haven't talked about called, and it's in the questions in the homework. Are we people who forgive too easily? This is an important concept too. I think sometimes our faith plays into this, where we feel guilty, maybe from a Christian perspective or a faith perspective, like, well, I can't be angry, and I gotta, don't go to bed angry, and I gotta forgive. So it might be a really deep hurt, but you're trying to just pretend, well, say, for example, you're just saying, it's okay, or I don't want to show my feelings that I'm really deeply hurt. And so you're so used to placating, or you're an enabler and you want to make everything right. You don't want any words, and you don't want any harm coming through. So there's this false forgiveness, or forgiving too soon, not really wanting to do the work of going inside your own emotions. That really is our work, to find out how we feel and why we feel, and do the communicating. Sometimes people don't want to do all of it. No, it's just got to be okay. They want it so badly, they'll just forgive everything. They, even without an apology, could be an awful thing, but the other person isn't going to apologize. So that kind of cycle just sets us up for more hurt in the relationship and more failure. So again, we kind of, sometimes the loud person or the inflictor gets the bad name, but we've learned through the program that we have to speak up, that's just as dangerous. You might have this person over here acting everything out, but what they're feeling and where they're at. And then it can be off balance if that other person doesn't do their part. So again, we're saying we each have to look into ourselves wherever you are on this spectrum, and you have to be responsible for that part. And even with forgiveness, you can't just wipe it under the rug.
Right. And actually, I think exactly. And I think this is probably a good time to show where, that summary, to share that kind of summary, because that's exactly what you're talking about. We talk about forgiveness is surrendering my right to hurt you for hurting me. I'm giving up that right. If I forgive Randy, that means that I am now not going to do something to hurt him back because he hurt me or whatever. So it's not a quick, I'm sorry and done and we're finished and everything's all great. It's a process. It takes time. People have to be patient. And you've said it many times, people have to be really honest with each other, but also themselves. We really have to be honest with ourselves and what's been happening throughout this. Did we have any part in it in any way, or our actions or our words or whatever? And that's hard to look in a mirror sometimes, honestly. And then, of course, the reviewer of what the things that don't work, forgiving too easily and holding a grudge, and then the injured party and the other party's work. So then we come to our questions to consider for this week. So there's the questions. I'm not going to read them because the people can, everybody who's watching, they can pause and take a look at these questions. But is there any particular question on here regarding ourselves, Mike or Andrea, that you find most important, or just the one where people maybe struggle the most?
Yes, I think key, am I trying to engage in honest dialogue? I will tell you from our own experience up at the Good News Center where we worked, and we dealt with many, many, many couples through phone calls, through the program confidentially that we'd sit with one-on-one. And what happened if there wasn't honest, if the person held back, like I said before, and allowed that there was no accountability when someone hurt them. They just buried those hurts over and over and over. Those were the couples that came to us, and the inflictor is like, we need help, we need help, we need help. And the other person is already done. They're the ones that are out of the relationship. They let it go, they let it go, they let it go. And then all of a sudden, because it's false, it was a false pretense that they weren't really telling and explaining to that other person how damaging it was, how hurt they were. And then it just got to the point where they wanted out. There was no fixing, no reconciling at that point. So the honest dialogue, you have to do the brutal part of it. And it isn't always easy.
Right, absolutely.
Well, and I look at this, and what sticks out to me is we talked I statements earlier in the series, and these are all I questions, right? So it's important to recognize we need to ask these questions of ourselves and not try and put these on the other person. So a lot of times these these principles aren't to be used on somebody else, they're to be used on yourself to move the process along, right?
Yes.
True. One more point I'd like to make. There's another type of forgiveness we haven't discussed, but to me, it's very important. I know times, at least one time specifically, that I hurt Andrea. I was the inflictor. We got through the process. We did the communication. It didn't happen quickly, but we got through it. We both did our own work. But the thing that lingered for me was self-forgiveness. Sometimes that's the most difficult because we do feel so guilty or so foolish for the mistakes that we've made. And if we can't forgive ourselves, then we truly never get over it. And that's something that I think is very important for people to realize, that when we do hurt others, we hurt ourselves, and we have to come to grips with that in our own emotional relationship with self. And that was very important for me.
Yes. And this third option is not a preachy program. For those of the listeners that maybe don't know everything about the third option, but there is a faith component. And I think, especially in this talk on forgiveness, it was important for us in our relationship and many couples. The example that we have through our faith of God's forgiveness was really important for us as individuals, as Mike is trying to share, and even forgiving ourselves, because ultimately we know that we're not perfect, but at least, we have that underlying faith of an example of forgiveness in our faith. So we know the couples that we call it the secret ingredient, because when you can kind of just wrap that around all the tools that we're giving you, it's really that little extra help that helps us to reconcile and get through this process.
Right.
Yeah, well, thanks for sharing that, Mike. It's hard to not only forgive somebody else if they've injured you, but also, yes, to, like you just said, to forgive yourself. And sometimes I feel like we think, well, I don't deserve that. I shouldn't forgive myself, because that way, I should always remember what I did so that I don't do it again. But really, you're still holding yourself within a cage if you do that. Yeah. So, and then you can't move on. So let's look at the questions now, where questions to consider or ponder in relation to our spouse. And again, I'm not going to read them, but is there anything there in particular that you find people, again, which one of those questions, or is there one of those questions where you tend to notice after your time of working with people over the years that people get stuck on, or people found most important?
Well, I see a couple right off. If I've been nursing a grudge
Yeah.
and then wallow in self-pity and resentment, we're not going to make any progress.
Mm-hmm.
Because here's an example of that. Even if you say that you forgive the person and you've supposedly come to reconciliation, but next week you bring it up again, and the week after that, and the week after that, that was not forgiveness. It's not healed. So we can't rush into this and think that we're going to fix it just by saying it. We really have to believe that. And then it really shouldn't come up again. And it doesn't mean that we don't forget how we were wronged. We never forget it, but we just don't keep it coming up again, because then it's really going to hurt not only yourself, but that other person thought it was taken care of, and it's not. And then the other part is, although my partner has wronged me, do I acknowledge my part in the problem? For the people that have made mistakes in their lives, sometimes that other person wasn't maybe doing their part in the relationship, in the marriage, that perhaps they didn't go out and do the act, for example, of what wronged them. But there could have been a contributing attitude or a nagging or some kind of thing that was not really healthy, and that could contribute to it.
Mm-hmm. And I think on a broader spectrum too, this is not part of third option, this is just my opinion. Everybody's worthy of being forgiven. I mean, I think that's the part we're hard on ourselves, and you might think you're not worthy, or we judge events and things that take place in the world, and you can have opinions that, oh, that person, but everybody's worthy of forgiveness, and it's not our human nature that wants to do that. Some of the most horrific things and stories that we've read, and I remember the Corrie ten Boom book. If you read that, I'm sure a lot of people have heard that, where she's gone through the Holocaust, and she meets one of the guys that was at the camp that took her family into the death chambers, and she meets him later on at an event, and she's in a line where she's going to have to shake his hand. And I remember thinking, oh my gosh, how could you be able to do something like, there's such terrible things that can happen that are so hard to forgive. But it's sometimes through grace, through our faith, through just making a decision that you're going to do it, that you receive the blessing and the peace that comes from forgiving someone. You release yourself. And so this is really a deep topic, but
yeah, I think, and I agree. I think that's a great point, Andrea, is that, like you said, how can you forgive, and that everybody's worthy of forgiveness. And I think that if somebody says, yes, I can forgive you, or I forgive you, you're worthy of that. You're worthy of being forgiven. Imagine that. And I think we sometimes have to remember, yes, if we can give that person that, acknowledgement that they're worthy of being forgiven, because maybe that person has never been through any sort of third option program where they've really been taught how to communicate with people, or really taught how relationships work, that, maybe just by saying you're worthy of being forgiven, you've done a terrible thing, but you are worthy. And then hopefully that person can then say, my goodness, maybe I am. And it gives them that power to go through these processes and start some of these deeper processes to change, to become a better person.
Yes, right. Just because we've made mistakes doesn't mean we don't have value. We have value because we're human beings. So, yeah.
Right. Well, and in finishing up with our final thoughts here, again, we want to, I'll put this information up so that if anybody would like to contact us, feel free to email us, contact us via Messenger on Facebook, or you can follow us on Twitter. We would love to hear. Did I say we'd love to hear? We'd love to hear. We'd love to hear from anybody. Any thoughts? What have you thought so far? And we're almost done. We're almost at our 14th topic, or at the end of the cycle. And you can always go back and review the cycles. That's the beauty. You can go back and you do them again and you do them again. So, but we'd love to hear from people about their thoughts on any of the topics, or your experiences, or, what do you think has helped, or I don't know, whatever, anything that you can think of. We'd love to hear. And again, the DVD program is available for you to stream, or you can purchase the DVD. And we'd love to see more of these programs out there. There are third option programs out there in the States. We have the information on those programs of where you can contact them, find out if there's a program or a community near you. Or if you're interested, please feel free to contact your church or a community organization and say, there is this third option program that I think would be wonderful addition to our area, to our community, to the families in our communities, and have them contact us. We can talk them through about setting up a program in that area. Maybe you feel so called to become mentors yourself, or want to facilitate a program or coordinate a program. Then absolutely contact us. We can set up Zoom meetings, we can chat, we can help you through organizing and getting a program set up in your area, because it really is worth it. It's self-change. And if everybody took the time to self-change, then it makes your family better. It makes your community a better and a stronger place. And it just keeps reaching out like a pebble in a pond. The waves and the, ripples just keep rippling out and positively affecting your area. So Mike and Andrea, thank you. I do want to let everyone know that we will not be live next week, but we will post our recorded conversation on topic 14, the last topic.
Yeah.
Yay. What are we talking about? Our last topic, Mike and Andrea.
Rebuilding trust.
There
This
it
is the
is.
last one. So get your ladders out. We're going to start in the basement and work our way up to the roof.
Awesome. Great. Thank you again, Mike and Andrea. We will see you next time. Thanks, everybody.
Good to see
Keep
you
well.
both. Happy
care.
4th.
Yes,
You
take care.
too.